Okay, it's 6 o'clock, and I think we can start. So this is officially, I guess, the kind of the first lecture we're doing on Tsotsi formally. Um, this is the movie you have to watch for Learning Unit 3, and it's a very interesting one. I think to begin with, before you listen to this, do make sure you've watched the whole movie. And I think after you listen to it, try watch it again. I'm going to be referring to certain scenes from the film that I think are important. I'm not going to be able to play you different parts of it, but I will show you various screenshots and point to things that I think are important as they relate to two things. One, place. Okay, that's the overarching theme of the module. But also in this instance, how place is communicated to us visually. This is a film. Um, Film is different to literature and books in that it doesn't use language, words, diction necessarily to communicate its various meanings or themes to us. Instead, it uses images, visuals. And those visuals are created through filmic techniques, the way a camera moves, where a camera is situated in relation to the actors, um, things like lighting, set design, cinematography, what the director puts into the movie after it's been shot in post-production, as they say. It can be effects, changing the lighting, boosting audio, adding audio in, making musical choices as well, all of which creates a meaning for the film, the fluidity of the film, but also allows us to watch something coherent that has some kind of an intention behind it. And whenever I teach film, I just like to remind students that making a film is really difficult. It's expensive. It's extremely technical. You need a lot of people to work with you, not just somebody to write the script, but actors, a director, crew, producers, people who know how to hold cameras, work cameras, a cinematographer, people in post-production. That means the thing is very technical, takes a lot of expertise and artistry, but also quite a lot of money, right? Because that's all true, it means that whenever you see a scene, even a frame in any movie, you've got to understand that a lot of work and many choices and many calculations have gone into making that single frame. Even just a few seconds of movie can cost a lot of money. So when people make films, they have that constraint, they have that in mind, that they can't just do whatever they want. They have to make choices. They have to work with what they've got. They have to spend money wisely, use their time correctly, and try to squeeze as much artistry out of the material as they possibly can in the time and with the budget allotted to them. So what I'm trying to say is that any film you see has a lot of deliberate choices in it. Everything you see on screen basically is there for a reason. It comes out of somebody's very carefully considered choice to put that thing in the frame where it is. Okay. So, for example, sort of looking at how this gets played out, and as I talk and as you watch the movie and think about it, I want you to keep this idea in mind, throughout the the analysis of the film. How are the characters' identities and their life roles defined by where they come from? In Tsotsi, people get locked into their life roles by dint of the place that they live in, the place that they come from. And the movie makes quite a damning and painful critique of modern day post-apartheid South Africa. Okay. And how various filmic techniques communicate these themes to us visually. Filmic techniques can be anything from setting the place, location, what the characters are wearing or not wearing, what colors you see on the screen, what music you hear. Probably most importantly is how the camera moves and what the camera sees. So what is in the frame. Okay. For example, this is a still from the movie, and this is what would be called a frame, just like a painting, a picture. The camera operates as a framing device. It captures something in the lens, and what it captures is what the director wants us to see visually. Tsotsi is not a movie with a lot of dialogue in it. There's actually very little dialogue, but it is a very, very visual movie. And there's a lot of stuff about just pure acting, body language, how the characters use their bodies, how they look, what their faces do on the screen. That communicates a lot more than words ever can. So the opening few scenes I think are very interesting. I'll come back to this slide here. It starts off in a particular place. The first thing we actually see is a hand shaking something. Then it fades to black a bit, and you get a title sequence going. And then the shaking hand comes back and reveals that what it's shaking is actually dice, and it's rolling dice on a table. And we're welcomed into the scene of, as we can see, three men sitting around a table playing some sort of a gambling game. Two of them are anyway. Another one is watching, reading a newspaper. And then a fourth, who we probably understand just from the setup of the movie, we may have heard about before, that the guy standing in the background is going to be the main character. That's Tsotsi. Okay. And he's standing off in the distance. He's in the background, actually, of the frame. Now, when you look at this as a picture, you see some very interesting choices that the director is making. Okay. We're in a particular place. We're in Tsotsi's shack in a South African location, somewhere outside of Johannesburg, right? They're trying to put all the things and the ornaments of life that a shack might have in it, from a bed to makeshift chairs, a little table, shelves packed with all kinds of things, kerosene lamp on the side, all the stuff of daily life. And Tsotsi very much is a movie that tries to capture the experiences of ordinary South Africans. It's kind of it's a gripping, dramatic story, but it's also a slice of life movie. It's taking just a slice of an ordinary South African's life and making us understand how that slice of it, a little bit, can actually also stand in for the whole thing. So this story kind of represents or says something larger about South Africa. It's a small bit of a larger thing, but the small is a metaphor for the larger story. And they're really trying to play with this idea of showing just the ordinary things about an ordinary life, and what happens when when extraordinary things happen to ordinary people. Okay. And then just in the framing of this, just to give you a sense of a director making choices and trying to communicate to something to us that's maybe not, immediately obvious, but which our sort of unconscious mind does notice and pays attention to, and begins to get cued into the rhythms and themes of the film without our even noticing it. Take, for instance, how he set up this frame. What you see here is these three guys. This is Butcher. He's a kind of really bad psychopathic killer. This is Arp, who's a kind of happy-go-lucky, jovial guy. On the back of his jacket, it says state property. So we understand that once upon a time, he was in jail. On the left here is a guy whose name is Boston. He's a kind of intellectual, educated guy who has dreams bigger than just being a member of a gang. He wishes to escape this life and become a teacher one day. And then we can see him reading a newspaper. So he's the kind of guy who's literate. He can read. And one of the first things that happens in the movie is that Butcher rolls the dice, gets I think he gets an 11, a 5, and a 6. And he says, I got 9. And Boston corrects him, says, no, no, you got a 5 and a 4, not a 5 and a 6. You got a 9. So we learn that Butcher is kind of enumerate, probably illiterate, whereas this gentleman here is a gentleman. He's educated, he's insightful, and he has bigger dreams. They're all in the forefront, and they make a nice kind of base here in the frame. And then Tsotsi's in the background. He's looking out the window at something we can't see. What that means is maybe quite interesting, that Tsotsi's kind of off his gang. He's just off the main thing. Remember, the movie is actually named after him, but the first time we see him, he's standing off. He's offish. He's away from the crowd. He's not really one of these guys. He's part of the gang, but he's also not. He prefers to be away from people. He's looking out into the distance, into the night sky. We don't really know what. So there's something about him that is a bit hard to access. We don't know what he's thinking. We can't tell, and he's standoffish. So the beginning of the film, this opening scene has Tsotsi as being a bit of a mystery. Who is this guy actually? What's he all about? What does he want in life? What's his story? And as the movie unfolds, we get to understand a little bit more about him. And one thing Gavin Hood does a lot in the film from a technical level is that he'll very often, at the beginning of the film, he'll have Tsotsi off, like away, and then he'll do this thing when he suddenly zooms in on Tsotsi, like this is one of the next frames. So we go from being far away and distant to getting a close-up of Tsotsi's face, his eyes, his expression. And that also mimics what the movie does over the whole course, is that it brings us closer to Tsotsi. Throughout the film, we actually get closer and closer and closer to understanding him, right? So this little shift in the scene from distant to close is going to foreshadow or mirror our own journey as an audience through the movie, which is going from disliking Tsotsi, thinking he's a bad guy, not understanding his motivations or his psychology, to at the end of the movie kind of being on his side, having been won over by him, right? The other thing that's interesting about this frame is that we've got these 3 guys in front in the foreground, they're the base. Tsotsi's head is actually the top there of a triangle, right? So if you look here, it's a triangular composition in the scene. And that's a kind of classical thing any artist would do. An artist would paint a picture like that, where the foreground has a strong base, and it leads your eye to the top of a vanishing point at the top of a triangle in the distance. And it creates a really nice balance in the frame. And it's like the director is saying, at the beginning of the film, this is the balance of the story that you're in. This is the status quo. This is how things are right now. This is how things are set up. This is the balance. But Tsotsi, he's the leader. He's the mysterious guy. He's the main character. And these 3 guys are his accomplices, and they make up the state of things at the beginning of the film together. Over the course of the movie, as things happen, the status quo is going to change. Okay, it's going to become a different balance or different order of things. But how? What happens? And what does it look like by the time the movie's finished? So it's like, again, we're getting cued in by the director to have all of these little unconscious impressions develop. Another thing might be, say, the color. If you look at the color that Tsotsi's looking out at, the sky is blood red, and red is a constant thematic choice that we see in the film. Tsotsi will often be wearing a red shirt, for example. Very often the sky around the places the characters move through is red as well. What does red imply? You know, fire, passion, but also danger, blood being spilled as well. And red is just a very common color throughout the movie. At some point, when Tsotsi changes, then the colors also begin to change into a different color too. So all of these little cues are things that are just plugging us into the things the director is trying to hint at, not tell us directly, because that can be boring, or like feel like a lecture, like you're being taught something. Whereas just having it be subtly suggested to you that you can work it out and see it for yourself is a way more powerful image of things. Let me flip to this point where Tsotsi looks back at the characters with a look of um, menace. He's quite sinister. He's strong. He's powerful. He's clearly the leader. He doesn't have a shirt on at this point, so he's almost like kind of naked, like an animal or something like that, right? Just he's in his element. He's the big guy. He's the top dog of this particular status quo, right? And as they walk out of his shack into the night to go on a mission somewhere to rob somebody, we see how he's the guy walking in the front of this gang, and you can see how the camera moves on him. It moves around, it pans on probably some sort of a dolly. The camera can be put on like a moving track, and it can follow around the characters as they walk. So we have a sense of movement, but also it allows the camera to pull out at one point as Tsotsi walks off in the distance, and we get a full picture of the township that he lives in. Again, lots of color. You can see the skies are red, pink, kind of burnt orange, indicating smog, dirtiness. This place is unhealthy, but also it's got that sense of something sinister, danger. It kind of looks a bit hellish. Like that's what the sky would look like in hell. But this is also Tsotsi's domain. It's where he's the boss and where he calls the shots. As he walks down the street, people make way, let him go through. He sees another gang member who banters with him. He throws a zap sign at him. And Tsotsi's his face in these scenes is very, very masculine, very macho, I think, is the other thing. If you look here also, it's a very disdainful, macho look. He wants to be like a strong man. Okay. From there, the characters go off into the night, and the camera picks them up in a train station. If you look at the scenes in the train station, they're also very telling how the camera is situated or placed in the scene, how it moves, what it sees, how people are portrayed. The colors as well are sort of much more muted, blue, gray, dark, black. Got that kind of sense of claustrophobia, of a bit of a dead, awful space that they're in. And in these scenes, we actually get to see for the first time what it is that Tsotsi does for a quote unquote living. He and his gang go to the train station and they start to basically hunt for a victim. Who can they rob? Who's got something we can steal? And their eyes, or Tsotsi's eyes anyway, latch onto this older gent, maybe 60 years old, who's got an envelope full of cash. And he looks like an easy target. So they settle on him. And again, the way the camera moves and where it's placed and what it sees is very telling over the course of the sequence, because you see Tsotsi's eyes in this scene. The eyes play a very important role. The characters don't say anything to each other. No words are exchanged. It's just glances, looking, watching, and moving. And that's also what the camera does. The camera watches Tsotsi watching and watches how his eyes pick up, look at targets, discard them, and then settle on the one it actually wants. And the camera actually pushes up closer and closer and closer on his face throughout that sequence. It pushes up in and zooms in until it's got an extreme close-up here of his eyes. And his eyes are watching this old man and deciding that he's the one they're going to rob and steal all of his money. And I think it's it's weird when you look at somebody in the eyes, isn't it? Like if you look at somebody for just 2 or 3 seconds, that's okay. But if you look at somebody in the eye for 10 seconds, then it gets really weird and creepy and quite menacing. And so when the camera locks in on Tsotsi's eyes like this, it can be very unsettling for the eyes to feel like they're watching you, but also for you to look into those eyes. The human eye is a very interesting thing. It's very beautiful, symmetrical. It's kind of a miracle it exists at all. But if you look in the pupil, the pit of the eye there, it's kind of just an endless, empty black hole. You know, they say the eyes are the window to the soul. If you look into these eyes long enough, you don't really see a soul. You just see something that's empty. And in another way, the way this image is arranged here on the screen, is you feel that the eyes are also predatorial. Might be something you see in a nature documentary, you know, a cheetah stalking a deer or something, when the camera locks in on the predator's eyes as it picks up every little movement and sees everything. So Tsotsi's eyes here are kind of empty, soulless, but also the eyes of a predator stalking its prey. That's how we're introduced to Tsotsi, is, you know, shirtless, macho, masculine, full of disdain, the capacity to be violent and a predator, right? And so he and his gang decide to rob the man, and it's not planned this way, it seems, but one of the gang members, Butcher, he takes out a big, I wonder what you would call it. It's not a knife, it's like a big, it's like a skewer, I think. You know, it's something you skewer food on. And he takes the skewer and he stabs the old man in on the spur of the moment, on a whim. He just stabs him through the heart on this moving train as they've got him surrounded and they take the money off him. There's no need to do it, but he decides to do it. And butchers the old man, basically, like with his skewer, which is, again, an instrument a butcher would have. And he dies kind of in their arms. And Butcher's face throughout that is just a face of just a total psycho. He doesn't care what he's doing. It doesn't matter. This is just the guy he, in a way, enjoys killing, right? So Butcher, you know, the movie's about Tsotsi. Tsotsi is a colloquial word for gangster, bad guy. But the real bad guy in the movie is actually Butcher. He's the really bad guy. Tsotsi is also a bad guy. He does terrible things. He does all sorts of terrible things. You know, he's gonna soon after the scene, he's gonna shoot a woman after stealing her car, make off with the baby in the back seat. So he does bad things. He commits crimes all the time, but he's not as bad as Butcher. And this, when you see Tsotsi's reaction to the murder of the old man, suddenly he doesn't look so macho. He actually looks scared. He looks like a little boy here. He looks afraid. And he doesn't like what's happened. He doesn't want the old man to die. This, again, is a good example of the kind of physical acting in the film. It's not throughout this whole sequence. There's no dialogue, no words are exchanged. It's just pure physical acting. And the facial expressions of the characters is what drives the narrative here. And also the insight into the characters. Okay. And Tsotsi here we see for the first time, while he's participating in something bad, he himself is not all the way bad. He's not an absolutely evil, terrible guy. There's a bit in him which he still has some vestiges of kindness, of humanity, of empathy, and a sense of right and wrong. Okay, if he were a proper, true killer, like a psychopathic killer, he wouldn't have feelings of concern. He wouldn't have feelings of being shocked or knowing when something is right or wrong. He just wouldn't have those feelings at all. So while he's doing bad things, you can also say that he does still have a bit of goodness in him somewhere. right? I'm just going to flip ahead in time. Um, Another interesting scene, and these are all little examples I'm just picking out from the first 15 minutes of the film or so. This is another one. This is after he's shot the woman in the street and stolen a car. And just as he realizes, oh dear, there's a baby in the back seat. What am I gonna do? What's gonna happen now? And I like this scene because it's again the director Gavin Hood trying to find an interesting visual way to show you something. He's not just putting the camera in the most obvious place possible. He's actually trying to work with the elements, with the place, with the landscape, um, in order to kind of combine these things and give you an insight into the thematic meaning of the story. So here, this is the scene, like I said, he's just kidnapped the baby and he's realizing it. But if you look at how it's shot here, first of all, it's shot at night, which is always very difficult to do. It's more expensive. It's more difficult because nobody can really see anything. You have to really be sure about what you're seeing. You need a lot of lighting in order to light things up at all. Here, what he's done is he's used the darkness of the night and the lights of the car to tell a kind of more symbolic side to the story. So as he's done something bad, and as he's got this baby in the back seat and realizing it, so we have this little car he's in. It looks little the way it's shot, and surrounded by all of this darkness. And the headlights of the car light up a little bit in front of it. So we got this blinding white light, which turns to teal, green, and blue and dark. So we have literally bright white simultaneously happening in this pitch black background. So we literally have like light and dark battling each other, which is usually symbolic for good and evil wrestling with one another. And that's actually exactly what's happening in the scene. He's done something really bad, something really evil, maybe. He's just shot an innocent woman for no reason other than he panicked. Um, and he's made his escape, and he's got a choice, a moral choice to make all of a sudden, which is I've got a baby in the back seat of this thing. I don't want the baby, but what am I going to do? Am I going to leave the baby here in the car, run away? He doesn't do that. Should I kill the baby? He doesn't do that. Should I take the baby somewhere else and ditch it? Doesn't do that. Those are all wrong, the wrong, immoral choices to make. Instead, he makes the decision to put the baby in a bag, take it back to his home, and start looking after it, which is, under the circumstances, the kinder thing to do. It's not a good thing to do because he still kidnapped the child. You could have taken it to a police station or something instead. But what he's done is a human thing to do. He's going to look after the baby, right? And so it's like the forces of light are wrestling with the forces of darkness, or at least those two things are happening simultaneously, where he does something good and he does something bad. He shows us the capacity for evil and for humanity. And that's really the kind of, if I can put it this way, the moral of the movie, which is that there is no pure goodness, there is no pure evil. That for most people, on average, we live lives in which we are capable of good things and we're capable of very bad things. Everyone's like that. The human soul is a contradiction. No matter who you are, whether you're very, very rich, whether you're just an ordinary middle class person, whether you're very poor and you've resorted to a life of crime to survive, you have this capacity for immense goodness, but also doing very, very bad, sinful, immoral, amoral actions in the world that cause a lot of damage. Both of these things live side by side within us, okay? And that's a human thing. What's happening here is that Tsotsi, through this process, is becomes a human. becomes and he's humanized in the eyes of the audience. So it's not just, the label in the film is Tsotsi, gangster, bad guy, villain. But as the movie progresses, we start to see him move from predator to um, a moral person, a person with a sense of what's wrong and what's right. Okay. I think another interesting scene that captures this, I'm going to just hop back now. This is just after Butcher has killed the old man on the train and they've taken his money. I like this scene as well. Just this image, this frame is again very telling. You can see there's a lot of artfulness in how Gavin Hood has constructed this, how it advances the story in one hand, but also visually it tells you a lot about what is also going on in the film symbolically or thematically or at a psychological, emotional level without directly telling you. So the characters are all kind of get together on the stairs outside the train station. They're not talking with each other. Boston is vomiting because he's so disgusted by what they've done and he feels terrible. So he's well, he's a criminal. He's also a softie. He doesn't want to be doing this stuff at all. And so he's the kind of stand-in for goodness in the film, for pure goodness, if I can put it that way. Bit of a kind of an archetypal cliche figure, I guess. The characters are all on these stairs. They're now standing apart from each other. The gang is sort of in a way broken up by this. They're not so close anymore. They don't have proximity. No longer see eye to eye. They're also on different levels, so they can't see eye to eye with one another. And that's an indication to us that this gang's not going to last. Part of Tsotsi's growth, development, awakening is going to be getting himself out of this gang, no longer having that as part of his identity and having the identity change into something else, right? And this happens before he's taken the baby. So he's already on this path of leaving behind one life and starting a different kind of life. So there's a little cue into that. Place here is important. It's again nighttime. It's very urban, kind of run down. You look at the fences here collapsing a little bit. Everything's decaying and grimy and kind of ugly. We've got two signs that are interesting. Okay, what's amazing is that Gavin Hood didn't construct this scene. They would have found it, right? They would have shot it on location, in other words. And he's got this interesting place, and he's finding all the ways to kind of capture everything about the place that contributes to the overall feeling or tone of the film. And he's made such a clever choice here because if you look at the two signs that are surrounding the characters, they are both really telling and very kind of one captures a theme, the other one captures something ironic about the film. Like here, the sign says, Komanani, we are all affected by HIV/AIDS, stand together against discrimination. And the movie was made in 2003, 2004. At that time, there was in South Africa, the AIDS epidemic was really just out of control. People were very afraid. The government was doing everything it could to promote awareness about AIDS, what it was, how not to get it. People were getting infected at a very high number anyway. They were dying of AIDS in huge numbers too. It really was a crisis and a disaster. And there was also a lot of stigmatization of those who had HIV/AIDS. They were shunned, they were embarrassed, they were treated poorly. And so the government had to kind of try and educate people that people who had AIDS were not bad people, all right? And this is one of the signs that they would have had, which is interesting because we've just seen how this gang has kind of summarily executed an innocent man, right? So just as that's happened, we come out in the scene and we see the sign kind of begging people to value humans and value human life, Whereas what's actually going on in the world, what's really going on in South Africa is that life is very cheap. It's easily expendable, and people will kill you just to look at you, right? So there's a very strong sense of irony, is that murder is just typical part of life, but also we have this like paranoia around getting sick. It's kind of very ironic. It doesn't quite fit together. It's a strange juxtaposition of things, a contradiction. And another way in which the movie plays with opposites, light and dark, good and evil, um, empathy and death, but then also life and death. So it's kind of an interesting choice. Also see that somebody's graffitied on the sign, so people don't really give a damn about this, what the sign has to say in truth. The other sign here is an advert for the lotto on sale here. And I think back just a few minutes ago in the movie, when we saw the characters rolling dice, they were gambling, and you think about what the roll of the dice means. That's what opens the movie. The first scene is somebody rolling dice. So there's a choice again in the story, which is showing that life kind of happens to us by fortune or misfortune. Life is a roll of the dice. Anything can happen. We roll it, but we are in no control over what actually turns up on those dice. Life is a gamble. Life is taking a chance. And for some people, taking a chance or being hit by bad luck is much worse than for other people. Other people who have money and means are able to ride their luck, good and bad. There's people who don't have money or much power in the world. When they get hit by bad luck or misfortune, they have no safety net. They're screwed, essentially. So this theme in the story of luck, bad luck, fortune, misfortune is, I think, an interesting one that pops up twice, very close, twice, very close together in the opening scenes of the film, right? So there's something about fate. You make a choice, you live your life in a certain way, and the world will give you certain consequences which you are not in control over. But whenever you are hit by new conditions, you do have a choice as to how you will respond to them. You might not be able to control what happens to you, but you can control your own response to them. And that's what Tsotsi learns through the course of the movie, is that he does things, there's a consequence. Now he's got to respond to the consequence. What does he do? Does he do a good thing or a bad thing? He has a choice every time. And over the course of the movie, he actually tries quite often to do the better thing rather than trying to do the worst thing, which is maybe what his conditions dictate to him, is that in order to survive the life he's got, he needs to do the bad thing. But in the movie, we see him very often actually making the better choice after fate gives him a certain consequence or a new reality to deal with. Gambling lotto is also something that poor people get trapped in. You never really win the lotto. The house always wins no matter what you do. Highly unlikely to win the lottery. You're highly unlikely to go into a casino and win the jackpot, right? All that's going to happen is that you are going to lose money. So there's also a sense of desperation. Like no matter what you do, you always end up on the losing side, especially if you don't have very much to begin with. So just these two little signs like that, you might not consciously notice it when you watch it. But when you rewatch it, or maybe when you think about what you've seen afterwards, you realize that actually, even in your first watching, you've unconsciously been picking up all of these little cues, all of these little Easter eggs that your unconscious mind notices and builds in you a kind of what feels like an emotional, psychological response to what you're seeing. These are all calculations, right? The director's putting these things in there for a good reason. He wants to suggest things almost subliminally so that you feel it at an emotional, unconscious level instead of feeling like you're having a message shoved down your throat. It feels as though you discover these things yourself, and you actually do it very quickly. Again, film's a visual medium. The one advantage visuals have over language and books is that seeing something is much more visceral, more emotional, more based in our sensory perception. And so visuals are also more emotional, right? So they're trying all the time to create and engineer these interesting, unusual images in the movie that also drive the plot, but at a secondary level contain interesting thematic ideas that provoke an emotion or a psychological response, something like that, right? And what I like about the movie is how full the frame very often is of interesting detail, whether it's in a close-up like that, where the character's really expressing something visually through their face. Everything from like his eyes, how his eyes look, the set of his mouth, to the earring in his ear tells you something. Same with Tsotsi. You look at his face, tells you the story. You look in his eyes. There's no language needed. It's just we instinctively know as a visual person what it is that we're seeing that's very evocative and provocational, right? So I'm going to wrap up here just with a reminder of the ICE task. All these things I've been saying are contained as a kind of a little test there for you to work through in your ICE task. We just have to write an analysis using filmic techniques to critically understand how that scene is put together, how it works. So you're looking for camera angles, you're looking at the mise en scène, you're looking at things like color, lighting, how the actors are arranged in the scene in relation to one another, all of which communicates a sense of power, physical power, psychological power, social power, interrelational power between these two characters, the beggar who's in a wheelchair, a makeshift wheelchair, and Tsotsi who comes out to do something to him. We don't know what Tsotsi wants from this guy. Is he going to rob him? Is he going to knock him out the chair? Is he going to steal his shoes? Is he going to shoot him? We're not really sure. So this will be the ICE task that I'd like you to do for this learning unit. It's ready up there to go. You can do it. It's 150 words long, and talk about it in the way I've been talking about the movie so far. Analyze it as you analyze it from the perspective that the director is making all these decisions in order to communicate something to you. What are the decisions and what is he trying to communicate to you? That's really how we think critically about film. Okay, so I'll leave it there. As I said, watch the movie again, do your ICE task. I'll do another short recording in which I cover the rest of the film after the ICE task. And I'll release that next week as a shorter recording, just talking about the film, how it goes, what happens in the middle, and then how the film finally ends. And in that lecture, the short recording will be the end of Learning Unit 3. And in the last few weeks of the semester, we'll tackle The Promise by Damon Golgat, the final learning unit of the semester. Okay, so I will leave it there for the evening. Hope everything's okay. Just let me know if you need any help. I'm always available on email. Remember to do your ICE tasks. And today's the day before public holiday, so hopefully you have a good and restorative Easter break. Until next time, stay well. Bye-bye.